name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Destroyer40. Our special guest tonight is lead guitarist Jen Paro from the Los Angeles-based Kiss tribute band Priss, and Jen's also part of a great new Cheap Trick tribute band out here, also based out of Los Angeles, called Cheap Trick. Thank you for being our special guest tonight, Jen. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. Now, you're obviously being in a Kiss tribute band, one of the longest running tributes out here in Los Angeles, the band Priss. Obviously a huge Kiss fan. So for people that don't know your story, could you share with us how you first became a Kiss fan?
Well, I became a Kiss fan whenever I saw their reunion tour. It was the first time I ever saw them live.
Wow.
And that did it for me right there. It was like I was hooked after that. I'd never seen anything quite like that performance-wise from any band, and just pretty much fell in love with the band and became a huge fan after that.
And let me ask you, was it a friend of yours that took you to the concert, kind of turned you onto the band, or did you just kind of see an ad and think, oh, that looks cool, I want to go check those guys out?
It was several friends actually, and we all decided we were going to dress up in Kiss, various Kiss characters with the face paint and everything.
Wow.
And go to the concert and have fun, and it was way more than what I had anticipated.
And let me ask you, Kiss as a band has been around for 40 plus years now. Like you said, you're kind of a fan. You became a fan much later on in the band's career. I'm sure, like a lot of people, you've heard of the name Kiss. But so talk about that a little bit. I mean, what was that like to go from just being kind of a casual observer to, full-blown fan now?
Well, it was interesting because whenever I first started hearing Kiss, it was when they had the makeup off, and they had songs like "Let's Put Dicks in Sex" and stuff like that. So it was. I thought they were. I don't want to say cheesy, but it's not really cheesy, but they were just kind of blended in with every other band at that time. So nothing really stood out with them.
Yeah.
But then when I went to see them in concert, it was like a totally different band, and it was amazing. And then I started getting into all their music, going all the way back to the 70s, and that is just, it's so much, I hate saying so much better than their 80s music, but I definitely like their earlier music.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, somebody that's seen Kiss in concert over years, both in makeup and out of makeup, like a lot of people, I much rather see them in makeup, but I will tell you this, as somebody's seen them, when they weren't wearing the makeup, I'd say the show is equally as bombastic. I mean, that's one thing Kiss is known for, their live show. In fact, in preparing for this interview, Jen, you and me were also talking about, which we'll get into a little later, that you're also in a Cheap Trick tribute band, and we were kind of talking about how Cheap Trick, like Kiss, are really known, for their live sound and their live content. And it's kind of interesting that both bands really kind of, when they really started going over the top was with their very first live albums. Like I was sharing with you the other night when we were talking through the email, I just find it very odd. Like if you take a listen to Cheap Trick's original studio version of a song, "I Want You to Want Me," it sounds nothing like the song that everybody knows today. It sounds like a swampy country song. But the version that's on Budokan, I mean, that's why it just put the band over the top,
Yeah. Yep.
And it's now going back to you becoming a Kiss fan and going to that first concert. You said you and your friends got made up. Do you remember how long it took you to get made up, and what was that experience like for you?
That took a very long time, probably about 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking, wow, this is a lot more than I had anticipated. Mm-hmm. I had no idea it would take so long to put all this makeup on, but and it was still even the same when I first started with the tribute band. I was like, oh my goodness, this is quite something here.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I'm one of these Kiss fans that I'm a fan of everything that's ever been kind of put out there, and going back and looking at some of, I will admit some of the stuff in the 80s and that, like you said, if you go back to the original music from the 70s and stuff, and even what they're doing today, I think during the 80s, some of that stuff, they were trying to kind of follow the trends, what was popular at the time, whereas even now today, or back when the band was first starting out in the 70s, they were like trendsetters. They were, they were setting the trends. And I think that's part of the reason that Kiss has been able to last, for 40 years.
Hello?
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, I think, one of the reasons Kiss has lasted so long is, going back to way back when the band was first formed in, 1972, they were setting the trends. I mean, I remember hearing stories where they talked about, people would tell them, you guys really got a great sound, but the makeup has got to go. And 40 years later, the makeup is what people, are still talking about. It's just, Kiss is one of those bands that got such a great sound, a great visual thing going. So I was curious, after you went to that first Kiss concert, how many years later was it till you hooked up with other girls and Priss and formed Priss?
Let me see. It was almost 10 years afterwards.
Wow, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
And now I know Priss appeared on Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. Were you in the band at the time? Did you get a chance to appear on the show with the rest of the band?
Oh yeah. It was a lot of fun, and we had Shannon Tweed on there with us. He got up and she sang with us.
Yeah,
we actually put makeup on her and everything too, so it was fun.
And you guys are one of the bands that have appeared. Correct me if I'm wrong, more than once on some of the most recent Kiss cruises.
Yes, yeah, we were on 2 Kiss cruises a couple years ago, and that was great. Actually, on the second Kiss cruise, both Cheap Trick and Kiss played on that cruise.
Wow.
Cheap Trick played the pre-party before it left, and then Rob and Sandra actually stayed on the cruise ship and performed throughout the entire cruise.
Wow, how cool is that?
It was awesome.
Yeah. And that's kind of, to me, one of the amazing things about Kiss. Kiss is one of these bands where I tell people it's more than just, a rock band. Kind of like a religion, a lifestyle. I mean, just think for a minute. I mean, from getting a chance to see Kiss in concert, to, it kind of led to what you're doing today. You got the band Priss. And then let me ask you, are you still in the other band, Co-Ed Kiss?
Yeah. We still have Co-Ed Kiss going as well, yes.
And because I know you guys were kind of recording like a couple tracks that put out as a demo or something, and I just kind of curious what's going on. Are you guys just looking for more gigs, or just because I know?
We play gigs occasionally out and about. We just actually played one in El Paso about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago now.
Oh wow, that's great. Now, a main topic of conversation tonight is the fact that this is the 40th anniversary of Kiss's classic 1976 album Destroyer. Would you say that you're a big fan of that album?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean,
it's one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, if you look at all the songs, just off that one album, that's half the songs in the Kiss set list, and it's amazing that 40 years later, those songs really still stand the test of time. I mean, being somebody that plays these songs, what are some of your favorite songs to play off that album?
Oh gosh, I would have to sit here and think of all of them.
Well, I'll list you some. You tell me how you, obviously Beth. Do you guys perform that song?
Beth?
Yeah.
Yes. We actually do that in the Co-Ed.
Okay, and then there's obviously God of Thunder, Detroit Rock City.
Yeah. I love Detroit Rock City. That's probably one of my favorite songs.
Yeah. Do you love me? And this other guy interviewed for this. His name is Chris Van Dal. He does a great Steven Tyler tribute. And he was sharing with me growing up that he was from Detroit, and he said the cool thing about when Detroit City Rock City first came out, he says everybody living in Detroit, we all the Kiss fans, we felt like that was our battle cry, that was our song.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's I've met people from all over the world on the Kiss cruise, but the people that were from Detroit Rock City, of course they, everybody supported their different countries, and they had their Kiss Army flag from whatever country they were from, but there was the group from Detroit that had their here we are, Detroit Rock City proud, And I run into people all the time at different shows we play that are from Detroit, and they just like a huge following with Kiss, a connection from that song.
Yeah.
You know, just it definitely is like their battle song.
yeah, and you know, I got to ask you, like, Beth, like 40 years later, I mean, that's kind of that's still such a big radio staple, and it's kind of interesting. You know, back in 1976, when the album was originally put out, that was somewhat of a controversy among the Kiss fans because that was like the first time Kiss had ever put out a ballad. In fact, it's been reported that Gene and Paul were so against that song being put on the album, they went into the studio and they were cracking up as Peter Criss was singing it, and the producer had to kick them out of the studio. And it's kind of interesting story because originally Detroit Rock City was released as a single and Beth as a B-side, but some DJ at some radio station, he started playing Beth, and it took off, and they had to re-release it with Beth as the single, and then of course, you know, Detroit Rock City, like we said, took on a life of its own. But it's kind of interesting the success Beth has had, and originally it was thought to be just a throwaway song.
Yeah, and then interesting. It's funny that you know, I've seen that, you know, with other songs and other bands too, where it's the song that you would least expect to be
A hit.
You know, a hit is the, you know, on the B side that nobody's gonna listen to is the one that gets like the most airplay.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful song. I love that song.
And I got to ask you, as somebody that plays the role of Ace Frehley, you know, Ace is a great guitar player. I must say, I think he's very underrated because he's not your typical guitar player. Somebody that became a fan, you know, later in life. You know, what's it like for you to play these classic, you know, Ace Frehley solos? And, you know, what do you really think about his ability as a guitar player? Because I think oftentimes he's very underrated.
Oh, I think he's an excellent guitar player. And yes, I agree that he's underrated. And I think that he's amazing. And I think he's also groundbreaking in the type of theatrics that he used with his guitar. He used it more, you know, not just as a, you know, as a musical form of art. He also used it as a visual form of art.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that he did with his guitar that you'd never ever seen before, like the, you know, the smoke coming out of the guitar and the rockets shooting off of it and everything like that. It has an extra visual effect to what is already a really awesome sound coming from him as well. And also, I think his solos are very melodic, and that for me personally is like what I like to hear from guitar players. I'm not really much into the guitar players that I don't want to say noodle, but like they play a lot of notes and there's not a lot of melody or like feeling to it.
Yeah.
And I think he captures the melody and the feeling and then adds another visual craziness on top of it.
Yeah, and let me ask you, you know, as somebody that's a fan, you know, what do you think? Like another well-known secret recently came out about the Destroyer album is they brought in this guy, Dick Wagner, who played with Alice Cooper for the song Sweet Pain, and he actually played the solos both on Beth and Sweet Pain. And back in the day, they kept it like as a big secret, and they made they wanted the impression that it, you know, all the members of the band played every note on the album. Now, when bands do that, do you think it's better to kind of keep it as a secret, or do you think it's better to like let people know this is the guy that played on the actual, you know, song?
Well, I think that if the person, if it's not I think that whoever's playing it should definitely get credit for it. You know, that's just me. I mean, as a musician, if somebody's out there playing a solo, they should definitely get credit. It shouldn't be kept under the radar.
Because I guess back in the day they wanted, like I said, they wanted the impression that it was all that, you know, that everybody in the band were best friends. They got along. Of course, that wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, even for years, like if you look at Kiss Alive 2, you know, Ace is obviously playing on the song Rocket Ride, but all the other studio tracks they brought in, you know, Bob Killick, and that was a well-kept secret for like over, you know, 20 years. and it's kind of just amazes you when you go back and you realize, oh wait, it was Bob Killick that played on those tracks, not Ace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a trip.
And then I understand you guys have actually played with Bob. What was that like?
Oh, that was a lot of fun. We've actually played with both Bob and Bruce.
Oh, okay.
Bruce, we played with on the Kiss Cruise pre-party. Bob, we also did it the Kiss Cruise pre-party, and also Kiss Night in Vegas. And they're both really, really nice, really sweet guys. They're both very kind and fun to play with, and it was a good experience with both of them.
Wow, and getting back to being a bit of an Ace fan, you obviously are. I got to ask, have you had a chance to hear his latest album, the covers album?
I've only heard like one or two songs off of there. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's amazing because I got to give the man credit. I mean, he's been known for years for putting out really great covers, and a lot of the stuff on the new album, I mean, is equally just as good. And the amazing thing is, like, especially when he takes other people's songs, he has a real gift for like really taking these songs and kind of making them his own and really putting his personality all over it. I mean, and then two of the tracks I really love that he put out there is he did a new version of both Parasite and Cold Gin, because these are songs that he wrote back in the day, but at the time he didn't feel comfortable in his ability to sing lead. So so Gene sang those songs, but it's great to finally have a version of each of these Kiss classics, with the man, doing the vocals, because I mean, it just takes it to the next level, and it just sounds just as great as when the stuff first came out back in 1974.
Yeah, I definitely got to get you the album. I've been meaning to do it. I sound terrible. I should got to play out.
Yeah. Now you're in a lot of other tribute acts. I guess the main other one I know you're in is there's a great new Cheap Trick one, and I think you guys are gonna be playing your first show this coming weekend. And I gotta tell you, what really drew my attention, probably like a lot of people, is when I started seeing you guys putting ads up, and I gotta say the photos look really professionally done. They you kind of almost have to blink for a minute because before you realize, hey, that's not Cheap Trick, it's a tribute band. You guys look that good.
Oh, we were really trying hard. We were studying the albums and trying to get the poses right. And so I got to tell you, that wasn't easy either, because Rick Nielsen's very animated. So I was trying to get his kicks and his it was interesting.
Yeah. And let me ask you, did you kind of did being in co-ed Kiss kind of give you? I mean, Cheap Trick's a totally different band, but is that part of kind of how you guys came up with the concept? Okay, well let's try to kind of do a Cheap Trick tribute with, and have a chick play the Rick Nielsen part, or how did you guys come up with that idea to do it? Just the fact that everybody was a Cheap Trick fan?
Yeah, I mean, I actually subbed for a while for an all-female Cheap Trick tribute band, and was approached by the drummer, who's also the drummer in Co-ed Kiss, to do a Cheap Trick tribute band that's basically co-ed. And I was like, oh, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And it's something different. It's not, you don't see that all the time,
Yeah, there's a couple Cheap Trick tributes around, but I say there's fair competition for everybody, if you know what I mean. I mean, everybody, I think, kind of out there doing it, they bring something different to the table. And I got to tell you, your Cheap Trick band, which of course is Cheap Tricked, the frontman Raleigh DeVore, let me tell you, he's a legend on the LA tribute scene here. And let me tell you, the man is just very talented. I'm sure I mean, he plays about 4 or 5 different tributes. I mean, he plays, for example, in the Who generation, he does a role of Keith Moon. He not only just does a role, but he looks and plays just like Keith Moon. When he's playing Peter Criss, he looks and sounds just like Peter Criss. And then I love the fact that, in this Cheap Trick tribute, he's not the drummer, he's the frontman. He's playing guitar, he's singing, doing the Robin Zander thing. I mean, that just shows you the guy's level of talent. And I know Raleigh also, from time to time, records his own original music. So I think it's great to have a guy with that level of talent in the band.
Oh, definitely.
And you guys, like I said, you all have different projects. Do you go and check out each other's different bands when you're not playing together?
Molly, actually, I also played in an all-female Van Halen tribute band, and I play bass in that band. And we all come out and support each other in our different projects, and I've come out to see some of the Who shows. He's gone out to see the bass players shows with his other bands, and we're just like it's a big community of sharing and supporting each other. And
now I gotta ask, did you get a chance to see? I think it might have been a week or two ago when he was on the Access TV World's Greatest Tribute Band with the Who generation.
I haven't got to see that yet. I've seen a lot of pictures, and it looks amazing. I can't even wait to see the show.
Yeah, the different bands you play in. Have you ever had have you ever even been offered to appear on that show, or is that something that you'd definitely like to have the opportunity to do one day?
Oh, I definitely would love to have the opportunity to do it one day. I'm not sure. I think I've tried to submit it before. I might try again.
Because I'll tell you the funny story. I've actually been down to like a taping a couple of those shows, and the funny thing about it is, even being in the audience, it seems like as quick as the show starts, it's over. Because the simple fact, you got to remember, this is live TV, and so from a minute that red light goes on, you're going over national TV airways, and it's kind of funny that you don't really have time to make a mistake or anything, but it's all rock and roll. Most of the bands are really good. They haven't had too many flaws or any major screw ups. But it's just amazing. Even in the audience, you kind of see, okay, red light on, and then before you know it, the show's over.
Yeah. It's very quick, and it's I can't even imagine the level of stress if you were a band at the playing, but being out in the audience, which I have been, it's a lot of fun.
But it's a great thing for like I've been talking to different tribute bands, and it's a great thing because a lot of people have these misconceptions that tribute bands, they just play other people's music. They're people that are failed musicians, and that's not really the case. I mean, like for example, you've been doing this for years. You're more than one tribute, and depending if you're doing Cheap Trick or Kiss or Van Halen, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. Because I mean, even you take the Van Halen, okay, it's an all-girl Van Halen tribute, so right there's something different to offer. But and you don't necessarily in that have the pressure of looking exactly like Eddie Van Halen or whatever. But I'll tell you, I went on the website before I was speaking to you today, and I was pretty impressed because even though it's an all-female band, and you don't necessarily have to look like David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen, like the guitar player had the yellow jacket like from a 1984 era. You guys, wear the authentic type clothes. You have authentic type of guitar. So, there's a lot of hard work.
I actually have the Jack Daniels bass.
Yeah. that goes into what you guys, do. So I really admire, that you guys put that much hard work into what you do. And I think people oftentimes, think, oh, it's just a cover band, but there's a lot more to it. Because to me, a cover band is just, band that gets up there and they play, different covers by like Deep Purple, Ted Nugent, Cheap Trick, whoever. Whereas, like what you guys are doing, it's an evening of, Kiss or an evening of Van Halen or whatever the case may be. And I've been to a lot of these tribute shows, and the cool thing is, if the tribute act is good enough, they can leave audience not only wanting more, but you almost pinch yourself. Like I seen a Guns N' Roses tribute, Hollywood Roses, and man, it took me back to 1987. Even though I was at the Whiskey Go-Go, I had to pinch myself. I thought, wow, that's as close as I'm going to get to seeing Axl and Slash on stage again. But it took me back, and it was that good.
Yeah, and what? I've actually had when we were on the Kiss cruise, I had a guy that was there and saw like Kiss way back when they first came out, and when they were young and jumping all over the stage like crazy. And he said that seeing us, even though it was the all-female lineup, he said it brought him back to those days, and he said it was just an amazing experience for him to be able to experience that level of excitement again.
Yeah, and interesting thing too about doing a Kiss tribute, like what you guys do, and it's being all female, is okay. Yeah, you still dress the part, like in your case as Ace Frehley, but it's a female doing it. It's a female voice, and I also think it's cool that like doing a Kiss tribute, all 4 band members sing. It's not just one person up there singing, and so you got before you were in Priss, I was curious. Had you ever done any lead singing, or was that the first time you ever had to sing lead?
That was the first time I ever had to sing lead.
And did it?
Usually just backing vocals, so it was a little intimidating.
So it took you a while to get used to hearing your voice, but I'd imagine after this many years of doing it, you're kind of at a point where, it's kind of second nature.
Yeah, you just kind of you have to. I mean, at first it was a little, kind of. I'm used to singing backing vocals, so I wasn't like overpowering or anything. Just kind of backed off, but it's kind of like, you know what? It's all or nothing. We just gotta belt this out and see how it goes.
Yeah, and the cool thing I would think with being a all-female tribute is you don't really necessarily have the pressure, I think, of having to sound exactly like Ace Frehley because you are a female. And the cool thing about that is not having that pressure, it allows you the opportunity to kind of put your spin or your vocal take on the tune, and you kind of leave your little personality in there, so to speak. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we try to put our personality. It's like the feminine side of Kiss, but not. I don't want to say I guess that would be how to say it. It's like the feminine version of Kiss, but we try to still emulate them as close as possible, and it's all about paying respect to that band and honoring their sound. And trying to be as close to it as possible, knowing that we are females and that we're going to have our feminine side to how we approach it, of course. And as far as the songs, that you have to sing, how many songs do you typically, Jen, during a Priss performance, have to sing lead on?
Usually just a couple.
And do you kind of pick the songs, or do you kind of have, at this point, or you guys kind of know what Ace songs that the Priss fans want to hear?
What's funny is that they love Rocket Ride. I guess not too many other Kiss tribute bands play that song.
Yeah.
So whenever I play it, they go crazy. And it's weird. It's just the weirdest thing. I was like, wow.
Yeah, because typically, that's kind of why I was asking that, because typically, for example, when people expect to hear Ace Frehley sing, they expect either Rocket Ride, although that's something they too commonly do, or typically they'll do like New York Groove, or they'll do like even maybe Shock Me or Rip It Out. So that's cool too when you get to kind of play some of the more obscure Kiss tunes. Yeah.
I just think that song is cool. I love that song.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So wow. And I got to ask you, because again, Kiss is one of these bands where, even kind of when you're going back, tell me how you first became a fan, kind of later on. When the first reunion tour happened, I guess. I got to ask you, what was that like? I mean, you obviously seen pictures of Kiss before, but seeing the band in concert, seeing the makeup. I'd imagine that the makeup and the visual look had as much to do with you becoming a Kiss fan as the music.
Yes. I'd only seen videos of them before that in their non-makeup 80s kind of videos where it was kind of they just kind of blended in with the rest of the band. It was just nothing visually special about it. Yeah. And then when I went to the show, I was completely. I knew they were going to wear their makeup, but I had no idea they did all of this other stuff because I hadn't really, seen any of the early stuff.
Yeah.
From the 70s.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that you can kind of become a fan, years later. And like I said, Kiss is so over the top that it's more than just a rock band. It's almost like a lifestyle to many of the fans. And so much point I got to ask you, last few years you've been hearing Gene and Paul talk about, well, even one day, Kiss will continue without us, and Kiss, we will replace ourselves in all this. And we've been talking about maybe having a reality show or something to find their own replacements. Could you really, as a Kiss fan, I guess, again, Kiss is not your typical band, but could you see, Kiss carrying on without Gene or Paul or any original members?
I think I would say that the Kiss Army can carry on, and it might be a different rendition of Kiss, but there will always be the one and only Kiss that started, inspired everything that is Kiss right now.
Yeah.
I do think that future generations.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, like this weekend we played at a show, and this little kid, I would say probably about 4 or 5 years old, was completely dressed in an Ace Frehley costume.
Wow.
And I was just like, and there were several kids that were like dressed up. So it's so cool to like see little kids like dressed up in Kiss costumes and like rocking out. It's like yes, this is the future Kiss Army right here.
Yeah, I never thought to ask that, but let me ask you, like, what's that like? To be up there, playing these classic Kiss songs, and do you guys ever have contests like in the sense of like you ever look out in the crowd and see how many Ace Frehleys are out in the crowd versus how many Paul Stanleys or Gene Simmons are, made up in the crowd? It's got to be a weird feeling. You look out to the crowd and see somebody that's made up and dressed just like you are.
Yeah, it's cool. I actually like it whenever people dress up and out to the shows. And I'm always like, hey, there's me.
Yeah. And so, like, when you're up on that stage, you kind of feel like you're, in your Ace Frehley mode, so to speak. I mean, you're really trying to play the role. I mean, you feel kind of like, you're in that mode. And, like, once you come off stage, how long does it take you to kind of calm down and get back to your, normal self, so to speak?
I definitely get into mode on stage. And when I get off stage, kind of still in mode. And then people, always like to take photos with us. Because, people love to take photos of Kiss. So, it's not something that you see every day. So, when people are, taking photos, I guess you're still kind of in the mode,
Yeah.
And, but after that, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, and now let me ask you, because again, you guys are a Kiss tribute band. People know you're not, the real Kiss, but let me ask you, after a show, you go out there, take a break, get some fresh air, you walk among the crowd. You ever feel kind of like rock star? Because kind of interesting thing is you guys started as a tribute band, but Priss has been around as a tribute band for many, many years now. You're one of the premier Kiss tribute bands out here, I would say, because you've been doing one of the Kiss tributes, been doing it the longest out here. And Priss has kind of built up a fan base of its own, if you know what I mean. So the name Priss, even among Kiss fans, kind of means something, more than just another Kiss tribute band. You guys kind of got your own fans. I mean, how cool is that?
It's really cool. And we've had a lot of really, really lucky opportunities. And we've met so many really, really cool Kiss fans from all over the world, and it's been amazing to get to meet so many people and so many people from all over, just getting sharing that love for Kiss music and getting to know them and things about them and stuff. It's like a little family. And see,
the cool thing with a band like Priss, even though you guys are a tribute band, like I said, you guys have. You've played on the Kiss cruises. Kiss fans know who you are. The name Priss actually means something as more than just another Kiss tribute band. You guys got relations. You've met Gene and Paul. You played the cruises and this and that. And so Kiss fans, know who you are. So when they hear the name Priss, or a member of Priss is going to be making a guest appearance at a Kiss Expo or something, that means something to people.
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah, but
it's really cool.
And so, like, obviously, you've had encounters with Gene and Paul. What's that been like?
They're very, very, very nice. I've met all the guys in the band. Tommy Thayer's been very, very nice as well.
Yeah.
And I that's the thing too, is like I have respect for all of the guitar players that have played with Kiss. And I know some people are huge Ace fans, and I'm a huge Ace fan, but they're all exceptionally good guitar players, and they all bring,
something,
what it is that they're specialized in, that their flavor to the band, And, I know some people don't like some of some of the guitar players or whatever, but I have respect for all of them.
Yeah, I honestly don't have a problem with it. I'll tell you why. Because it's not a situation where they're trying to scam fans into believing it's Ace Frehley and Peter Criss up there. Fans know it's Tommy and Eric, and they've been honest about that. And And I think your story kind of goes to prove what Gene and Paul have been saying. Like you're telling me you became a fan later, later in life and that. Whereas like Gene and Paul have made the claim that, okay, the reason we have Tommy and Eric, wearing the classic Ace and Peter makeup is because those four figures are iconic figures. Those are figures everybody know. And honestly, as great of a drummer as Eric Carr was, and a big fan I was of his, I do think a lot of times when people think of Kiss, they do think of a spaceman, they do think of a cat, they do think of, the demon and the Star Child. They don't necessarily think of, Vinnie Vincent's character or, Irva Fox, because people think of Kiss, it's those four iconic figures. And, that's kind of funny thing is that if you stop and think about it, those figures, the Catman, the demon, the Star Child, the spaceman, those icons have become, almost bigger than the people playing them, which is kind of a funny thing to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, so much to the.
It's true though. It's like the branding for it. That's what brands or Kiss.
Yeah. I mean, so much to the point that these guys are much more than just musicians. They're smart businessmen. So much to the point that, Gene and Paul, they licensed all four of the makeup things. They own the trademark to each one, and that's why anytime they put anything out, those Kiss masks, they make a ton of money. But it's much more than just another rock band.
Yeah, definitely.
And now, as far as when Priss plays, I got to ask you: do you guys primarily play just the like classic material from the '70s, or do you ever get into any of the later like '80s and '90s stuff?
We do play some of the '80s stuff. Not so much the '90s, but definitely a lot of the '70s and some of the '80s. Yes.
Have you ever played anything like off of Monster or Sonic Boom, or is that something you guys would ever?
Oh, I've been trying to get them to do something off of Sonic Boom. There's a couple of songs on that I just love, and I would wish we would play them, but maybe here in the future we will.
Yeah. Well, Kiss is one band that you can't say you don't have material. I mean, I don't even know. I dare to even guess how many songs they've written over the years. But I mean, that's one thing about Kiss is I think why they're 40 years strong is they don't always get credit for being the great musicians that they are. But I think they're even better songwriters, and that's why talking a little bit about Destroyer. Again, if you go back and look at all those songs, that's why those songs are still in the set. They're really on that album. They really stepped up the songwriting. I mean, Bob Ezrin, who produced that album, and Revenge years later, and all the great classic Alice Cooper stuff. He co-wrote all that stuff with Gene and Paul, and I think that's why Destroyer is one of the better Kiss albums, because that was the first time where Gene and Paul really started writing together. They did co-singing on a lot of his songs, and that's why I think that's some of the best material, even to this date, that Kiss has ever put out.
No, I agree. I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and that's why if you compare, even though the albums were years apart, if you go back and you look at Destroyer and then Revenge, which came out in 1992, it's almost like that was the follow up to Destroyer, because again they brought back Bob Ezrin, Gene and Paul started writing together, and I think that's what those guys do best. And when they start writing their own songs, it's not necessarily as good, but I think that is the classic Kiss sound. If you go back and listen to Destroyer, that's why many people point to that one album. Okay, you want to know what Kiss is? Listen to Destroyer. You put that on. That's what that's the band's sound.
Right, and you can see. I mean, that they're a good songwriting team together. I mean, a good example would be like if you look at their solo albums. They didn't really do as well as they did as the whole band, and when they did work together to write songs and everything.
Yeah.
And that's the same with other bands as well. When you have two really good songwriters, or three or four in the band, like for instance the Beatles.
Yeah.
Would be a good example. It's just amazing all the songs that you can put out that are just amazing songs. And
that's like get back to earlier what we were talking about. Why I don't really have a problem with Kiss carrying on, with Eric and Tommy and wearing, the other guys' makeup, because for like I said earlier, they're not trying to scam anybody, believing that's Ace Frehley, Peter Criss when it's not. People know what they're going, and you still, if you go to see a Kiss show today, you still get a rockin' great. Just great visual audio show, that you're not going to forget. I mean, I seen Kiss the last time when they did the tour with Def Leppard. Before that, with Motley Crue, and it was great because you had two great bands, two great headlining sets, and both bands had a great live show visually and put out the best stage set they could. So you got a show that it was well worth the money. Kiss does not disappoint, and that's if you're you got to look at Gene and Paul's age. They're in their 60s, and they you got to do what they do. You got to be in great shape and stay fit, and so I give the guys a lot of credit. And a lot of people wish that Ace and Peter were still in the band, but for obvious reasons it didn't work. I mean, it's almost like history repeated itself. But at the end of the day, I think the reason why Kiss is still able to be successful is because Gene and Paul are the two guys that have been at the front of the band, since the inception. They're the guys that wrote the majority of the songs. They're the guys that wrote and sang lead on majority of the tunes. Not saying anything against Peter Ace, but they were better songwriters. Their songs, kind of were the better ones. And that's why when you have the two guys that have been doing it all for all 40 years, that's why I think it'd be a very different band if, Gene and Paul had left and Ace and Peter were fronting the band, just these guys, their songs are much better. It's not saying anything against the other guys, because even you take a Peter Criss tune like Hooligan, great tune, another great underrated tune, but that doesn't mean that he's a better songwriter maybe than Gene and Paul. But I think when they all get together, they, like you said, they all bring something to the table. Yeah, and well, Jen, I want to thank you for being part of my Destroyer40 interview special. This will be going up probably in the next month or so. I'll be sure to let you know once it goes up. Thanks for doing this. Is there anything you'd like to say to all your fans listening to this before we wrap it up?
I have so much fun doing this, and it's been wonderful to meet so many cool Kiss fans all over the world, and I feel very blessed, very lucky, and I just want to keep rocking.
And the last thing I want to say to you, Jim, before I let you go is, like I said, I know you're going to be playing your first show with Cheap Trick this weekend, so good luck with that, and I'll be sure to follow up with you and see how that went, and maybe down the line we can do a full interview on Cheap Trick, because I think the band's got a lot of promise, and I wish you guys all the luck with that.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate
that. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.